Hello everyone, and welcome. If you're seeing this video, then that can only mean one thing. He's done it, ladies and gentlemen. Not only did he find my video, but he also did a response to it. And so, I promised you guys me comparing my list to his, and so here we are. Incredible, isn't it? So I'm going to get a couple things out of the way right off the rip here. The first one being that if you didn't watch my video from the start to the end, and like you didn't read the comments, or like you weren't paying attention to the annotations throughout the video, or like you didn't watch the last couple seconds of the video, my list might look a little bit different than from the video, and that's because I made 4 changes in post, and if I could, I would probably make one other change right now, but we'll get to it later. But I'm just going to cover those changes just explain them just so that we kind of understand like what's going on there. So the first change I made is I moved Blue Mage from S to A. The simple reason being that for S tier, I need a unit to be able to be fielded on their own and reliably win fights, or they need to provide such insane support that without them, other jobs wouldn't be able to be used. So like think about Green Mage's Trank being able to like enable Dragoon. And Blue Mage does neither of those things. It gets close. Blue Mage does have good supports. It does have somewhat of a way to, like, it is kind of a win condition, sort of, maybe, with the re-raise that it can provide, but it's a little debatable. But anyways, yes, that's why Blue Mage is in A tier. The next change was I moved Time Mage from S to A tier, and it's basically the same reason as Blue Mage. Yes, Hastiga is incredibly oppressive, but it's not a game winner. You can win the game without Hastiga reliably, and like, obviously if you feel the Time Mage by itself, it's not going to win the fight, so. The other change I made was I moved Paladin from A to B. Simply, the more I think about Paladin, the more I come to realize that Paladin is just... you kind of want it to be secondary to something. It's playing second fiddle to something else, right? It's never, oh, Paladin is really good. It's always, oh, Parivir is amazing if you put it on Paladin. Like, because, I mean, we'll get to it, but, the synergy that Parivir has with Paladin. It's always, oh, Paladin skills are good as a support to something else, right? It's never, oh, Paladin's a good class, because it's not really. So, like I said, we'll get into it a little bit more later, but the main reason why I moved Paladin down was because I don't think it really stands out on its own as a job, and it's best as like secondary to something else, so it went down to B tier. And then the last change I made was Alchemist. I brought it from B to C, and very simply, it's just because Sage does everything Alchemist does, but better. So here we are. And so yeah, I think that is all I need to say about that. So another thing I will say right off the rip, my list and Cruza's list has different criteria for where we placed things. For example, Cruza really values equipment. Like, if a job can equip robes and knight swords, that means something more than a job that can only wear, like, instruments or something. Whereas in my list, I don't value equipment as much. Like, I don't really talk about equipment basically at all in my original video, except for, like, every now, like, specifically for, like, Beastmaster, I talked about, oh, it wears instruments, but for the most part, I don't really care about equipment too much. So there's that. And then in my list, I really value if a job provides a specific support or reaction ability to the race, then I count that. So, like, for example, Ninja provides dual wield to Humes, so Ninja's really valuable. Whereas in Cruza's list, he evaluates Ninja as if it didn't have dual wield. So my point in saying all of this is that our lists are going to be different. We value different things. And so, like, it's understandable why some things on his list might be lower than things I put on mine, or vice versa. I'll try my best to explain it when we get to it, but I just want you guys to understand that right off the rip. And so, with all that being said, I think I can finally get into it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start at the top of his list and just work my way down. So to begin with, we have Parivir. I'm pretty sure he and I have the exact same opinion on Parivir. It's the best class in the game. Recently I've been thinking about it, and honestly, I kind of can argue Summoner being better than Parivir, but I'm not like that's a nothing burger. Like, the point is that we both agree that Parivir is insanely strong and is probably the poster boy for S tier, so that's fine. Next we have Blue Mage. So, Blue Mage for Cruza is kind of a one skill wonder class. That's the vibe I get anyway. Because anytime, or when Cruza talked about Blue Mage, he's like, oh, it's S tier because of meme reasons, and that's because Blue Mage spams Roar. In my other video, I kind of explained why Roar is not that big of a deal. Because, yes, especially in the later fights, you do start to run into enemy units that have, like, lots of buffs. But, like, most of the buffs that you run into that you have to deal with, you can kind of just ignore. And the ones that do kind of matter, like, for example, haste, you'd be like, okay, well, I kind of want to get rid of haste. Well, just dispelling haste is not really the best thing, because when you haste a unit, it moves up, like, all the turn order for that unit, so that, like, their turns come quicker. And when you, like, dispel the haste on that unit, it doesn't suddenly reset the change in their turn order. So when you're getting rid of haste on a unit, it's much better to either slow or stop them, because then it changes their turn order. And it kind of gets rid of the effect that haste had on them previously. So if you're using Roar to get rid of haste on units, like, that's not even necessarily the best thing you should be doing for that. Like, sure, it's easy to do it, but, like, so, yeah, I don't know. Cruza really, really values the Roar, but I think even if you value Roar a lot, I don't see why Blue Mage should be an S. He doesn't really talk about the other stuff that Blue Mage provides too much. He does, like, acknowledge that they have Dragon Force, Expose Weakness, and Mighty Guard, and War Dance, but he doesn't really, like, say much else about it. Blue Mage also gets, like, they get Quake and Sandstorm, which is Earth magic spells, so you can kind of turn your Blue Mage into a mage, kind of. I mean, if you pair them with something else, because only having access to Earth spells is kind of bad, but like, Blue Mage provides a lot of utility, for sure, and they're strong, but I don't think that they're S tier. So yeah, I can understand his placement of S tier though. Like, they are good, so I'm not gonna say much else apart from that. So next we have Paladin. Okay, so the discrepancy we have with Paladin is kind of part of a specific issue, and that is that he and I both evaluate equipment differently. In Cruza's eyes, knight swords and robes are king. Robes are incredibly strong, so much so that the other two armor types seem very weak in comparison. And also, he believes that knight swords are so insanely strong that all the other weapon types are weak in comparison. Well, relatively weak. That might not be necessarily true specifically for weapons, but, like, he puts he values robes so much that he's willing to put Paladin S tier because of it. I don't hold the same sentiment that he does. I believe that armor is... all three types of armor are kind of on the same level of power. I think, if anything, the best armor type in the game would be light armor, which is vastly different from his opinion on it. But even then, even though I say light armor's better, but like I'm talking like it's just a smidge better than the other armor types. But otherwise, they're all like on the same level of power, I think. So, and the reason I believe that light armor is really good is because light armor has, ninja garb. They have the Brint and Galma frocks. Galma frocks. They have like the lordly robe. Like, I can understand the sentiment of robes being good because you tend to kind of lead towards your units having lots of defense and not as much resistance. So having robes as an equipment helps makes up for your lower resistance stats. I can kind of understand that. And the fact that like the Reaper robe gives you absorb dark, so it's the best robe defensively, and it gives you an element that you can absorb, so you can kind of abuse that. So like, don't get me wrong, robes are definitely good, but like, so are light armor. Like the ninja garb, sure, ninja garb kind of has low-ish stats, but it gives you straight up 15% evasion. Okay. And 15 evasion, like on paper, mathematically, it means that you're going to be taking 15% less damage throughout a fight. And so, yes, Ninja Garb stats might be a little low, but you also get like an asterisk of, 15% damage reduction. It's not specifically damage reduction, but like it is, like it turns out that if you measure how much health you're losing, ninjas are going to be losing 15% less health than other units because they're dodging 15% of the attacks that they receive. And it's not just attacks, like they're also dodging like debuffs and stuff like that too. So and then like even if okay, well, the difference in stats, because Ninja Garb gives you so low defenses, it puts your ninja up to being one shot. Well, then I have to argue the 15% evasion is even more valuable because then you have a 15% chance to just not die then. Whereas before you would probably like live with a couple HP or whatever if you didn't have that evasion. And so, and like even heavy armor has stuff it provides. Like heavy armor has the Petriol, which is arguably the best armor in the game. So I think all three armor types are kind of in the same playing field, so I don't think Paladin wearing robes means anything for evaluating the job as being good or bad. And then Paladin having Knight Swords, yes, statistically, being able to wield Knight Swords is the best weapon type because of the Fallen Angel and the Sequencer being the best statted weapons in the game. But the other weapon classes, like, they have good weapons too. Like the highest damaging katana is on par with the Fallen Angel for like damage stats that you're gaining. The Ragetsu Denbu gives you speed and evasion, similar to the way that the Fallen Angel does. Like pretty much every single weapon type, except for like a couple like short swords and knives, they all give you comparable stats to like the Fallen Angel. Or they have weapons that can give you comparable stats to like the Fallen Angel. So yes, it is a boon to be able to have Knight Swords, but like, is it enough to put Paladin in S tier? I personally don't think so. I don't think so. I think what matters more in this game is like level up stats more than equipment. unless you're specifically looking at, like, you know, being able to use Ultima at range or whatever. But I think level up stats matter more than the types of equipment that most jobs are able to have. So, but yes, all of this is to say that the reason why Cruza has Paladin in S, I know in his response to Coffee Potato, he was like on the verge of bringing Paladin down to A tier, but then he like stopped himself. He's like, "Do I think that Knight Swords and Robes are worthy of S tier?" And he said yes, and he left Paladin there. So like that's like if I were to get into the mind of Cruza and like really value Knight Swords and Robes, then yes, I can understand S tier. But the reason why I have Paladin in B tier is that it's a horrible class, or like it has horrible skills, and it has like like I said at the beginning, Paladin is always playing second fiddle to something else, whether that's to enhance Parivir or just be like support options to another job. And so that's why Paladin's B for me, and that's kind of where the differences are there. I think that's all I have to say about that. But yeah, I think that kind of like if you want to understand the differences between my list and Cruza's list, you look at Paladin and you can kind of understand like our difference of opinion there. So next we have Ranger. I'm pretty sure we both agree on what Ranger's capable of, so I'm not going to spend much time on that. Next we have Trickster. Cruza values the fact that Trickster gets basically across the map Ultima every other turn. And don't get me wrong, that's really powerful. And Trickster has like the stat growth to facilitate across the map, like to facilitate using Ultima. It has really high magic growth and really high speed growth. So don't get me wrong, it is really strong. I can understand that. But the reason why Trickster is not an S tier for me is because, like, let's be real here. Let's actually be honest with ourselves here. If your goal is to do Ultima spam, okay, there is one way to do it. You have a Mou. It is Sage and Time Mage. You have a Moogle Juggler, or you could even have another Mou Time Mage if you wanted. First turn, you quicken your Mou Sage and Time Mage, and then when your Sage and Time Mage goes, you use your quicken on like your Moogle Juggler, and you keep doing that, and you start amassing a bunch of MP on your Mou. And then you take your 2 units and you walk them across the map. You pick a unit and you start spamming Ultima with your Mou Sage Time Mage. That's how to do it. Turn 1, you get to start bonking things immediately, okay? In comparison to that, every other Ultima option in the game is horrible. Horrible. So, to say that Trickster's S because it can do Ultima every other turn, personally, I don't think that's S tier. But again, don't get me wrong, it is incredibly strong. It can almost win fights on its own reliably, so I can understand S tier. But for me, the reason why Trickster's not an S tier is because that is not enough. And even if you look at what other things Tricksters can do, like the fact that they're a debuff class, I like the fact that they're a debuff class, but it's still not S tier. So I think that's all I need to say about that. Juggler and S tier. I mean, yeah, I can understand that. I mean, me personally, Quicken is obviously really powerful, and being able to do it for free is really powerful. But you don't really need it to win the game. You can be totally fine without it. So that's why Juggler is in A tier for me and not S. But I totally get this, and I'm not gonna like I'm not going to fight him on that. That's an understandable thing. Now we have Seer. Okay, so the difference in our opinion on Seer basically comes down to specifically Magic Frenzy. I know he's going to talk about it when he releases his video on the topic, but Seer is kind of like a whole bag of things. For Cruza, Seer is really strong because Magic Frenzy gives you positive turn economy. It means you get magic plus other things. So essentially what that means is that in your turn, you're spending one action to do multiple things. And to him, that is super valuable. And on paper, it would be. I totally agree. The problem with Seer, the problem with Magic Frenzy in particular, is that yes, it is good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. But it is not so good as to be S tier. And the reason being is that what are you using Magic Frenzy with? The best use case for Magic Frenzy is on an Illusionist. Because you're casting magic guaranteed on every enemy unit on the map. So that means that you're casting magic plus an auto attack. Okay. The problem is that your physical bonk from your Illusionist is like on rods, and it's on an Illusionist, on a unit that's going to have no physical attack. So you're going to be doing like a magic nuke and then like a super weak physical hit. So yes, that is still technically action economy positive, but it's not really that much better than just using Illusionist as is. Just using your Illusionist spell and then, you know. And let's say that physical bonk is enough to kill the unit, whereas without it, it would stay alive. Okay, so let's say you didn't use Magic Frenzy. Well, then all the enemy units are at critical HP. Well, you have 5 other units on your team in the fight. So your 5 other units can just walk up and do a physical bonk and, you just win the fight that way. Or you just wait another 2 turns for your Illusionist to cast another map-wide spell. And so, okay, well, let's assume that you, like, min-max your stats, that you have tons of physical and tons of magic. Well, at that point, wouldn't you just run like a max magic Illusionist? Like that would be one-shotting things anyway, and then your Magic Frenzy physical bonk wouldn't mean anything anyways, because you wouldn't even get the chance to use it because you're one-shotting things with your max magic. So yes, it is good that you get an auto attack for free on your magic, but your auto attack on the magic is doing nothing. It's doing like peanuts, man. It's doing nothing. And even if you try to finesse it in a way that you get more out of your physical bonk, like let's say you do dual wield on your Illusionist, so you have two rods that you're bonking with, well, then if you're doing dual wield, you can't be using Have MP, so your Illusionist spells are 32 cost. So you have to wait 4 turns, or you have to get like help from a Cannoneer, or you need to like maybe use the refresh skill from Seer. So you're sacrificing your Have MP to get a second really weak physical bonk. So, like, again, don't get me wrong. It is good. Is it S tier? I don't think so. And then let's say you do something else with it. Let's say you're doing like you're more leaning into the physical side of the Magic Frenzy. So what would that translate to? Okay, well, let's say you have like a dual wield Paladin, secondary Seer. You wouldn't do that, but let's say you do. So you have a magic hit from your Seer skills, which will take 2 turns to get anyway, because you're not having Have MP, and the only offensive magic that Seer has is Tier 2 Black Mage spells, which requires 2 turns to get the MP for. So you wait 2 turns, or you use Recharge or whatever, and then you do your magic hit, and then you get 2 physical hits. Well, the problem is that you're doing a weak magic hit, and then 2 strong physical hits. Okay. Yes, you can hit multiple people, and that's probably even more effective than using like Magic Frenzy on an Illusionist. But like at that point, you're spending 2 turns to charge up your Paladin Seer. And in those 2 turns, other jobs, other things are accomplishing more. They're accomplishing as much impact that you're going to get out of your Seer Paladin than you are going to get. Like, for example, your Parivir could have killed 2 units in those 2 turns. Or, like, you know, your Master Monk could have killed 2 units in those 2 turns. Or your Summoner could have, like, revived your whole team if you're halfway through, or if you're nearing the end of the fight and it's a grueling one or whatever. You know what I mean? So Cruza, I understand the action economy is really good with Magic Frenzy, but it's not. It doesn't translate to, oh, you get 2 actions instead of 1. It translates to, oh, I get an action plus, you know, a little bit of physical damage, or I get an action plus a little bit of magic damage. So it translates to like a 1.2 or something like that times action. And then if you go to the way to like try and make the ratio higher, well, if you get a max magic illusionist, why would you even use magic frenzy at all? You just spam illusion spells and you're one-shotting things. Or if you go max attack, well, you're one-shotting things with your max attack units. So what's the point in, you know, even bothering with Seer stuff? Yeah. So that's, I mean, that's kind of my opinion on Seer. I can sort of understand the appeal, and if you hyper value action economy like you do, I can understand S tier. But me personally, no, it's not S tier. In practice, every single time, it's just, man, I put in all this effort to get Magic Frenzy on my Illusionist, and it's super weak. I would rather just, you know, wait a couple more turns and use another illusion spell. Next we have Red Mage. So, Red Mage in S tier, I can understand it because it's super simple to just be like, double cast is OP and call it a day. The reason why Red Mage isn't in S tier for me, and like every time I see people be like, oh yeah, Red Mage is S tier, like no offense to you, Cruza, and I know this isn't the case, but putting Red Mage in S tier is kind of a noob trap. Because don't get me wrong, like double cast is amazing, it's super strong, but Red Mage as a job is bad. Like if Red Mage did not have double cast, it would probably be like a C or D tier job, because the Red Mage spells are awful. It's tier 1 Black Mage plus Cure, Shell, and Protect. And that's bad. Okay, early game it's fine, but like as soon as you get past the first 20 missions of the game, like tier 1 Black Mage and tier 1 White Mage spells are bad. So without double cast, Red Mage is nothing. So you have to evaluate, is double cast S tier? The thing is like, Summoner is strong without double cast. Green Mage is strong without double cast, and with double cast, it just breaks them. You can live without double cast, no problem. Okay, so to cut the long story short, Red Mage is A tier for me because while double cast is really strong, the job itself outside of that is worthless. So that's all I have to say about that. Next we have Fusilier. So this is, like I said in my video, when I put Fusilier in C tier, I mentioned that it's probably going to be one of my controversial ones, and I ended up being right about that. I am willing to admit that Fusilier is better than C tier. I would probably say be A tier. The problem with Fusilier is that you're not getting damage out of them. They're not a damage class. You're using them for damage plus debuff, okay? That's my first problem with Fusilier. My second problem with Fusilier is that you don't get them until late in the game. And even if you try and rush missions so that you specifically get Fusilier, by the time you get Fusilier, you probably won't have the guns required to like unlock Stop and Charm Shot, which are the premier abilities from Fusilier. Because let's be honest, the other abilities Fusilier have are kind of worthless. So my point is that it's a lot of investment for this job. You're not going to be using it early, so... And arguably, that's when you would want to use Fusilier, is early game. Because, you know, having Stop for the first, like, I don't know, like 50 missions you do is incredible. But are you going to have a Fusilier with Stop Shot within the first 50 missions of the game? I doubt it. I doubt it. And so by the time you get Fusilier with Stop Shot and Charm Shot, like unless you specifically bum rush it, you probably already have a fully functioning team full of things that can do what Fusilier does, but better, or have a higher impact than Fusilier. But that's a little bit of a nothing burger. It's not really fair to do that to Fusilier because you're trying to evaluate what Fusilier does without like all that overhead nonsense. You're trying to make it fair. So like in a vacuum, yes, Fusilier is good. Being able to stop things and charm things is good. And Fusilier also gives concentration as a support ability, so you basically are pretty much guaranteed to land your debuffs. But the problem is, you know, Moogles are only supposed to really do one thing. And if you're not doing that thing with your Moogle, you're kind of playing Moogles wrong. Juggler is just on such a different playing field than all of the other Moogle jobs that even if you're like doing Fusilier, that just means you're not using a Juggler. So don't get me wrong. Like I said, I think I probably would move Fusilier up, probably just to B tier. I wouldn't say that they're A tier. After like deliberation, but at the end of the day, me personally, I just find that my jugglers, my other units, are doing more things faster than what Fusilier does. If Fusilier had an option to do more damage, like, okay, I saw someone say, okay, well, you pair Fusilier with Moogle Knight. So, you know, you have access to ranged Ultima, but the problem is that it's full cost Ultima. But apparently, what is it, like Moogle Rush? The like inaccurate Moogle Knight skill that like it does double physical damage, but it's 50% accurate. Apparently, that's weapon range. I don't know if that's true, so don't quote me on that, and I don't plan on testing it because. But if that is true, they have that. But the problem is that it's, you know, a skill that's 50% accurate and does double damage. And at that point, how is that any different than like Dragoon? You still have to like, I guess, you know, because they get concentration, it'll land more often. But yeah, I guess it's just me personally. Like on paper, Fusilier is awesome, but in practice, for me, I just find that it underperforms. So that is why I put Fusilier in C tier. It probably was like too much to do that, I will admit. But is it A tier? Like I said, all of my Moogles end up being jugglers. And when I say all of my Moogles, I mean 2 of them. If that. If that. Usually I end up firing all my Moogles so that I have room for other stuff in my clan. So yeah. Next, you have Master Monk. Not much I could say about this. I'm pretty sure we just agree wholeheartedly on everything that Master Monk can do, and I'm pretty sure that Cruza would put Master Monk in S tier. He says that they have a crippling weakness, and that is that they don't have ranged options. I agree. But you give them White Monk, and then they're fine. So I think they could be S tier. But yeah, I think we basically have the same opinion on this. Same thing with Time Mage. Cruza basically only values Hastiga from his Time Mage. I value like the other things that Time Mage can do as well. But at the end of the day, we basically have the same opinion on this job. So Templar, it kind of has the same deal with Paladin, where Cruza really values knight swords and robes, and Templar can wear that, so it's A tier for him. But the problem with Templar is that it only has 3 movement. And on a melee fighter, that is pretty bad. Cripplingly so. It means that you will not be able to back attack things unless... Well, like, on paper, you won't be able to back attack things if they're always, like, facing towards you. Like, if the enemy's always facing towards your Templar when they end their turn. So, yeah, I don't think Templar is worthy of A tier. Don't get me wrong, Templar does have good stuff. Haste is good. Discipline is good because, like, if you put it on a Cannoneer, then your Cannoneer, like, it just adds to the damage that your Cannoneer's outputting. So it is good. And I also heard someone suggest like putting Templar skills on a Bishop, and it kind of got me thinking about that a little bit. So, but it's definitely not A tier. Again, I think it mostly just comes down to Cruza being like, oh, it gets knight swords and robes, so Templar's A tier. So not much else I could really do about that. Green Mage, Cruza said that Green Mage is a 1-skill wonder class. In my video, I discussed why that isn't the case. Yeah, so the only thing I can really say about this, Cruza, is try out the leap strat. Seriously, it's a lot of fun putting Ninja Tabby and on your Parivir and then casting leap on it and then just throwing it down the map and just first turn it blows up something and it's good, trust me. And then something else that I've kind of been toying with recently is the idea of using oil more often. Parivir gets a fire element in their lineup of skills. And so imagine like first turn, you moved your Green Mage up, you double cast. You put leap on your, or I guess okay. Let's say it's not the first turn. Let's say first turn you're like move your units closer. Second turn you double cast your Green Mage. You put Trank on your own Green Mage and then you oil an enemy. And then you bring up your Parivir and then you use the fire skill that it has. I've kind of been toying with some tech when it comes to that. I think oil is a little bit underrated, so I'll have to see how that goes. But if that's the case, it just makes Green Mage even better. But yeah, other than that, I think we basically have the same opinions on Green Mage. Ravager, I know in Cruza's response to Coffee Potato, he said that he would probably put Ravager in S tier, mainly because he forgot that Gria are women, and women can wear ribbons, and ribbons are the best. We love ribbons. And because we love ribbons, that's right, we love women. So yeah, Ravager is just easily S tier. I mean, they're just incredible units. Not much else I can say about that. Cannoneer, same thing. We basically have the same opinions about Cannoneer, so I'm not going to go over that. Hunter, okay, so Hunter... This is one of the other ones where, like, I know my placement of where I put Hunter is going to rub Cruza in a weird way. I just know it is. I just know it is, dude. Because he values Have MP long-range Ultima. he values that so much. But like I said earlier, if you're doing Ultima spam, there is one way to do it, and everything else in comparison to that one way is awful. But don't get me wrong, have MP long range Ultima is fine. The reason why I don't like Hume Hunters is because they do not synergize with anything, which is a stark contrast to Gria Hunters, who they synergize almost perfectly with Raptor. But you look at Hume Hunter, what are you putting as Hume Hunter secondary class of skills? What are you putting there? I mean, you can't put Parivir skills because you require a bladed weapon for that. Paladin skills? I guess. Paladin skills on your hunter? I guess. I suppose. What else? You know, you can't put magic skills on it because you're trying to save your MP for Ultima. So you can't really put like a job that has skills that cost MP. So then what else do you have? You have pugilist skills on your hunter? I mean, hunter has a ranged AoE physical damage skill. So getting aura blast from fighter is like that's nothing. You know, soldier skills on your hunter, I guess. I mean, you would have speed down at range, I think, but it's not damage plus speed down. So yeah, Hume Hunters are just my problem with them is that they don't synergize with anything. And as I was talking about it, I thought maybe, okay, well, maybe they would be the one job where you put items as their secondary. And that, I guess, you could also give yourself ethers that then you won't even have to wait turns to charge your MP for your Ultima at range. But if you're putting items as your secondary action slot, to synergize with a job, I think that is very telling that a job is kind of bad. So I know it's not just me. I know there's a couple other people who I've talked to before that also agree that Hume Hunters are just like, they're whatever. They're a unit that just kind of like exists to them. I know some people do value the long ranged Ultima, and don't get me wrong, that is good, but at the end of the day, I just don't respect it. I don't respect Hume Hunters. I don't respect anything about them, so for me, that's why I put them in C tier, and I don't think anyone can convince me to bring them out of C tier unless they come up with some kind of tech that doesn't revolve around long range plus Ultima. And if you're going to tell me, oh, hunters have, you know, Sidewinder or they have these other skills, the problem with hunters' other skills is that they're every single one of them are either situational, are basically a nothing burger, or they are like a looting thing. So, yeah. Anyways, that's that. Gria Hunter. I know we both have Gria Hunter in A tier. I think it's for different reasons, but because like I value Gria Hunter being synergistic with Raptor, so that's why they're in A tier for me. Cruza has Gria Hunter in A tier because it's women and can wear ribbons, and yes, they don't get access to have MP, so they can't do Ultima at range every other turn. But Cruza doesn't seem to mind that, so that's why he has Hunter in A tier. But other than that, not much else I could say about. Okay, so Alchemist. Cruza admits that his placement of Alchemist comes down to bias, essentially. Like he just kind of has like a soft spot for Alchemist. And the reason why I put Alchemist in C tier, I kind of covered it already. It's just that Sage does everything Alchemist does, but better. I know Cruza like probably doesn't agree with me, but like okay. Alchemist's gimmick of being able to have a third slot for items means that you have to main Alchemist. What are you putting as Alchemist's secondary abilities? You're not going to put Time Mage because you want Time Mage to be focused on doing Time Mage things. You're not going to put Sage because there's way too much conflict. It's kind of a waste to do that. You could put Black Mage, and that would be fine. What else? You could maybe put White Mage, but then your only offense is non-elemental magic hits, which is, it's fine, but like it's not that good because non-elemental magic hits is the same as an elemental magic hit that just isn't hitting for like weakness or resistance. So it's, I would much rather have the option to hit for weakness so that I can get extra damage. You know what I mean? So Alchemist is a main job. Odds are you're probably going to put Black Mage as a secondary. And then when that happens, like, how is that any different from just doing like a Sage with a Black Mage secondary? It's just not. So, yeah, like I've said a couple times now, Sage just does everything Alchemist does, but better. And, yeah, I can't really... And, like, Alchemist is kind of shoehorned into being a main class, and if you're doing that, it just means that you're forced to use weaker Sage. So, yeah. I know he's probably going to have some words about that because this is kind of like his pet job. But, I mean, I've already laid out how I feel about that, so. Okay, now we have White Mages. So I don't really understand his separation of the White Mages class. I know that in his response to Coffee Potato, he admits that he would drop Viera White Mage down with the other two White Mage jobs. And that's fair, that's fair. Because, like, functionally, they are all the same unit. And yes, Viera does have access to Blood Price, but if you're using Blood Price, you're doing it on a summoner, right? So, like, But other than that, functionally, all three races of White Mage are exactly the same. They have the same tools, they do the same thing. They're functionally not different from each other. So separating them is kind of a mistake, which he admits. I think that they're C tier. Like, I think his placement into C tier for the White Mages is fine. I think it's fine. I think it's he doesn't really value what White Mages provide because, like, yes, they have Refresh, but Blue Mage Roar, and, like, he doesn't really care about revives that much because it wasn't him talking about White Mages, it was some other job, but he says that, like, in fights where revives matter, you're probably breaking the law anyway. And, like, to that, I just have to say, Cruza, try and challenge yourself to not break the law. Because if you're not breaking the law, that means you can revive, and having access to specifically a raise from the White Mage, which is a revive, plus it goes to full HP, is actually quite potent. I was reading in the comments of one of your videos, someone was talking about White Mage spam in the late game is actually, like, it's hard to lose fights with White Mage spam. Because anytime someone dies, you just instantly revive them to full HP. And late game, like, that's we're talking like 500 plus HP. Like, that's a lot. And yeah, it basically makes the game trivial because you're just never losing because you're able to revive your allies to full, like, without any issues. So I think C is probably a little low, but, like, I'm not mad that he put White Mages in C tier. I can understand, like, not valuing them. I understand that, but yeah, so I think that's all I have to say about that. I know I'm saying that a lot. But I'm trying to, like, stop myself from rambling. Next we have Spellblade. I think we have basically the same opinion about Spellblade. I know Cruza doesn't really talk about, like, how, or maybe does he? I forget. But, like, Spellblade is really good on Sniper because on the turns that you're waiting for the MP to cast Blade Art with Turbo MP, you could use Double Shot instead. And so you're still kind of maintaining the high damage output every single turn by offsetting it with Double Shot. So you have Double Shot, Blade Art, Double Shot, Blade Art, etc., etc. So Other than that, I'm pretty sure we have the same opinion about Spellblade. So, Elementalist, I have mine in A tier. Um, I mean, I totally understand that. I think a lot of people kind of sleep on Elementalist, and not that like that's a bad thing. I think I can understand that. My point is that yeah, I can understand B tier. Um, they're just like they're a good unit, but they're not gonna blow your socks off. So, and he misses the whole thing about the white flame heal, which again I don't blame him. Not a lot of people know that you can even do that, so that's fine. Um, yeah, next we have Bard. Cruza kind of evaluates Bard as a one skill wonder class as well. I could kind of understand that, but he believes that the Cannoneer Ether Shell is just so much better than Magic Ballad. I kind of disagree. A lot of the times you don't need 60 MP to charge your units. You only need like an extra 10. So in those cases, you can use Magic Ballad and hit multiple units, whereas Cannoneer can only hit one unit per turn. So it kind of just comes down to what you need for specific situations on whether or not you want to use Bard or a Cannoneer. And then other than that, Bard has other things going for it other than just Magic Ballads. So that's why I have Bard in A tier and not B tier like him. So now we have Assassin. So Cruza admits, or no, he says in his response to Coffee Potato that he is not going to fight the placement of Assassin being on S tier. Because I know me and Coffee Potato both agree that Assassin is S tier. And Cruza says that like it's understandable if you like debuffs, so I think he's probably going to say something similar to me when it comes to Assassin. Like, obviously, I value my debuffs, so it makes sense that Assassin's in S tier. But when Cruza placed Assassin in B tier, he explained that Assassins, like their one-shot skills, are inaccurate, and so it ends up being like you lose efficiency on your action economy by using assassin skills because either you have to give them concentration, in which case you won't have enough MP every single turn to facilitate all their skills, or you spend a green mage turn tranking your assassin and then doing the one shot things, or you just say fuck it and just live with the 60% accuracy on their stuff. So it ends up like making them a little inefficient on their action economy. But to that, I have to say, when you evaluated Arcanist and you said that death, being able to land death every other turn is still landing death every other turn, it's the same thing for Assassin. Being able to one-shot something every other turn is still one-shotting something every other turn. And the difference, the reason why Assassin as a debuff class is so much better than something like, I don't know, like Trickster or, man, I don't know, the plethora of other debuff jobs. The reason why Assassin is specifically potent is because their stuff one-shots, okay? And theoretically, that's better than what your Parivir is doing. Because, yes, there comes a point where your Parivir is one-shotting things, but it takes a while. And until then, your Assassin being able to one-shot things is outperforming your Parivir. Because it'll take your Parivir 2 turns to kill something, whereas your Assassin's probably doing the same thing, but the difference being that Assassin's taking a unit and going from 100 HP to 0. Whereas Parivir is like, oh, you're doing like 80% of their HP, and then they have the chance to heal or something. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't think Assassin is worthy of anything lower than S tier. I think S tier is a proper placement, and I think me and Coffee Potato kind of have the same opinion when it comes to them. Is that they are just really good. Their insane speed growth helps a lot as well, and they are just like assassins they're not like one trick ponies either. They can synergize with other things as well. They have MP Ultima at range, and I know Cruza said that your assassin's Ultima is Like you're not doing a lot of damage with that. And to that, I say just level up as summoner. Assassins don't need attack stats, so you can level up your Viera as summoner or whatever you want to get magic stat, and then yeah, just switch to assassin after. That way your ultimas are doing tons of damage. You can build assassin to be basically the same as a trickster. So which again, ultima spam. But my point is that assassins, they're not one-trick ponies either. You can build them to do other things. They synergize with other stuff really well. And one other thing I will mention, I said in my video that bishops, they're the only axis to break in the whole game. That's not true. Assassins can also turn things to stone, which is also pretty cool because the stone effect is effectively a one-shot. Like, it kills the enemy unit, but it leaves their corpse so that you can, rob it of loot and equipment, which is fun. So yes, next we have Viking. Cruza said that Viking is hard to place. And he says that Viking is only used for their strong arm ability to steal armor. I disagree on the first part. I agree on the second part. Viking is very easy to place. They are D tier. They are very bad. Okay. They're probably C tier. I think that my placement of them being C tier is still generous. They are probably just D tier. The problem with Viking is that they're basically like a magic casting unit on a race that has awful magic. Like, Seek are the worst race in the game for magic, period. Their best magic growth is 7, and I think it's shared with 3 other jobs, so it's... and, yeah, so Viking skills are awful. Viking level ups are bad. They get 11 resistance, so you might chuck a couple levels if you want to build a tanky Seek, but like, Lanista exists. So Viking's only used for stealing armor, and I evaluate thief skills as being not useful because stealing stuff does not win you the game. Okay, maybe you can argue that stealing armor off something helps win the game because you deal more damage to that unit once you steal the armor off of it. You could argue that, but like, why would you do that? Why would you argue with me about that? That is, no, don't do that. Don't argue, oh, stealing stuff is good because it makes the unit easier to kill. Let's not die on that hill. But Cruza's right. Strong arm is the only thing you use Viking for, and then once you have access to all the armor you want, you're not using Viking anymore. So putting Viking as B tier is wrong, I think, and I think saying that they're hard to place is also wrong. And that's all I have to say about that. Now we have Moogle Thief, which is confusing to me why he put it here. He says that the reason why Moogle Thief is higher than Hume Thief is because what else are you doing with your Moogle? Moogle Thief is in a higher tier because if you use a Moogle Thief, you're not sacrificing the unit for something else. Whereas if you use like a Human Thief, that means you're not using like Parivir or like any of the plethora of good human jobs. I think that's a little weird. I think that all thieves should be in the same tier, and it should be in D tier. Actually, I should say that thieves are able to steal HP, steal MP, and they have a skill called Steal Limelight, which allows you to steal, I think it's Crush Gauge is what it's called. And Crush Gauge allows you to summon the Scions from the endgame accessories or whatever. So that's something. The cute thing about that is that it gives Moogles an in-race ability to restore MP. It's the only way for Moogles to restore MP within their own race, and that's through stealing it with the Thief job. So that's cool. Considering you can steal HP and MP with the Thief's job, I could see maybe bringing them up to C tier with that alone, but definitely they belong together. They are functionally the same unit, and separating them because of opportunity cost, because I don't think that's, no. I think you should just put them in the same tier. So yeah, like I mentioned, stealing stuff does not make progress to winning the game, so that's bad. I don't think that you could reasonably say that thieves belong in B tier. So next we have Sage. I think we both agree on what Sage is capable of. Cruza talks about how there is no water, watera, and waterga, and like no arrowra and arrowga spells. It's just base water and arrow. The thing about that is that yes, there is only just water and just air, but I'm pretty sure the base damage of those spells are on the same level as raw spells anyway. So, and raw level damage is serviceable, so that's fine. Yeah, I think Sage is a good class, and it's also a job that kind of stands out on its own. It's not like most of my B tier is defined by units that you probably would have their abilities go secondary to something else. I don't think Sage kind of fits that. I think most of the time your Sage is going to be your primary unit, and then other things go secondary into it. But yeah, I think that's the only discrepancy me and Cruza really had on Sage, is that he undervalues the water and air spell that Sage provides. But it's not like anything crazy. So next we have Fighter. I believe we are of the same mind on Fighter, so I am not going to say anything about that. We have Raptor. Yeah, I can understand B tier. I put mine in A tier. I think Cruza undervalues the speed down debuff. He obviously thinks it's good, but his argument was, why would I spend a turn dealing 70 damage and lowering speed when I could have like a Parivir walk up and do 350 damage? And to that I say, being able to crowd control your enemies early on in a fight is really good. Speed downing like high threatening targets is strong. Specifically like bosses that tend to have tons of turns stacked up on top of each other, being able to speed down a boss so that you have more time and more room to breathe, especially early on in the fight, is really good. And the thing about stat down debuffs is that they tend to stick, because unlike overhead debuffs, they last forever unless either they are immune, it gets cleansed, which I think can only happen with refresh or roar, or they get like speed up, which I don't think exists in this game. Actually, it might on a monster skill, but so speed down is really good. I definitely recommend, Cruza, that you put together a Hunter Raptor and just speed down the living crap out of everything you see. It's really good, trust me. But other than that, yeah, I can totally understand Raptor in B tier. It's on its own, it's kind of strange because it's like a physical unit, but like randomly the only ranged option it gets is magic based, and it's specifically a wind spell, and it gets 8 magic growth randomly, and it's a little weird, but other than that, yeah, I can understand your placement of it. Okay, we have Illusionist. Did I accidentally skip Illusionist up here? Oh no. So we know why Cruza has Illusionist in S tier. It's because of Seer. Um, to him, Magic Frenzy Illusionist is like the thing. So that's why he has Illusionist in S tier, Hume Illusionist. The reason why I have Hume Illusionist in S tier is not because of the Magic Frenzy Illusionist stuff. It's because Illusionist provides have MP to Humes. So, yes, they're in the same tier, but it's for different reasons. And then as for New Mou Illusionist, I can understand you not valuing them in the same tier, because I understand that you think that Magic Frenzy Illusionist is very powerful, and New Mou does not have that. What I don't understand is you evaluating New Mou Illusionist in B tier, 2 tiers below Hume Illusionist. Because if you take away Magic Frenzy, these two units are functionally the exact same. And late game, they are functionally exact same, even with Magic Frenzy. So having them, I can understand being like, okay, New Mou Illusionist is high A, Hume Illusionist is low S. I can kind of understand that. And even if someone else made another list and they're like, okay, Hume Illusionist is low A and New Mou Illusionist is high B, I could kind of understand that too, to a degree. What I don't understand is you putting Hume Illusionist in S tier and New Mou Illusionist in B tier, even considering your stance on both not valuing the support have MP skill that the job provides and also the Magic Frenzy discrepancy. Because functionally they are the same unit, and don't get me wrong, Illusionists are really good. So yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about that. Is I think you put New Mou Illusionist a little low considering where you put Hume Illusionist. I don't think we have any discrepancy on Dancer. I think I could skip this because we are basically of the same mind when it comes to them. Okay, Scholar. This one's gonna be a long one. Scholar's gonna be a long one, so buckle up. So I guess the first thing I should do is I need to remedy a mistake I made in my video. When Cruza was talking about Scholar, he was talking about absorb MP, like the cheese you could do with specifically the support skill absorb MP. At the time, I totally forgot that absorb MP exists, and I mistook it for replenish MP. So, when I made my video, I was like, oh, absorb MP doesn't exist. The skill you're thinking of is replenish MP. Which was wrong. So, right now, I will say, Cruza, I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for tearing into you about it when I was just wrong about it. With that being said, the stuff I did say about replenish MP is still true. And so I will talk about absorb MP now and what that implies to the evaluation of Scholar. So, absorb MP can only be learned on 3 races, which just so happen to be Humes, New Mou, and Viera. And the problem with that is that those 3 races already cheat their magic. All 3 of them have access to have MP. Viera have blood magic or blood price. Like they can already skirt around the MP issue. You would much rather have this absorb MP option on something like Moogles or like Seek or even Gria, kinda. Not really, but specifically Seek because of Lanista. You'd much rather that, because then the Scholar cheese where you can restore MP on units would make more sense, because then your Moogles would be able to spam, like have an easier way to spam, Ultima and stuff. Whereas on Humes, New Mou, and Viera, they don't really need it. So the whole thing of, oh, you give your units gear that make them resistant to an element, and then they restore MP when your Scholar casts spells. Sure, but like, why would you do that? Could you not just field a Cannoneer and shoot an Ether Shell into whatever unit you want to get MP into? So, or like field a Bard so that you could spread it out across multiple units. I understand that, like, oh, it's damage to the enemy and you're restoring MP, like, that's the whole cheese of it, but the reason why I put Scholar and never use, I clearly defined it that if you're, like, if it's harming you to use this unit, it belongs in here. And if you're doing the strategy with Absorb MP, guess what? You're taking damage. It might not be a lot of damage. It might be in service of dealing damage to the enemy, but it's still dealing damage to you. And that's something that no other job above the never used tier does. So other than the remedy to the Absorb HP, like, I I think you guys, like, I don't need to repeat myself on how I feel about Scholar. Scholar has 4 elemental types. All of them are commonly resisted or absorbed by enemies that you face, so you will constantly be needing to change the equipment on your allies anytime you want to do the Scholar strategy. And it gets to the point where, like, the heal that you're receiving from the Scholar half of, like, the cheese strategy is inconsequential to winning anyways. So, like, sure, you're nuking your enemies and restoring HP to your team, but, like, if you were also just nuking your enemies, that would have been fine too. Like, the HP restore doesn't mean I win or lose the game, right? So at that point, it's no different than just using an Illusionist. And Illusionist would be better than Scholar in that case anyway, because Illusionist has access to every single element except for Dark. So, including a non-elemental magic hit too. So, I can, like, if you don't follow my philosophy on the never used tier or the quote unquote joke tier, I still don't think Scholar is anything better than a C tier. I think it's very bad, even with the cheese strategy in mind. So, yeah, I don't really agree with the B placement for the reasons I have stated here and in the video that I released before this one. And so, yeah, we have the white mages. I already kind of talked about those. So, Fencer, I believe Cruza put Fencer in C tier because Fencer is a good level up class. Fencer only provides HP because if you want attack, you would level up as Sniper. So the only thing you're doing is you're leveling up your Vera as Fencer to get HP. And the problem is that there's only really one job you're going to be using as Vera that is offensive, and that would be Sniper. And for that, you're not leveling up as Fencer. So when you are leveling up as Fencer, you're putting it into your magic classes. And the unfortunate thing is that it's a little bit weird because you're gaining HP and attack into your mage units, and gaining attack it feels like wasted. Like, you'd much rather be able to gain a ton of HP and a ton of magic when you level up your Vera when you're trying to min-max your stats. So Fencer just comes down to, it's a level up class specifically for HP, and even then it's kind of like whatever. I don't think Fencer should be in C tier because of that. All of their skills are useless except for the one that does damage and lower speed. And the problem with Fencer is that all of his skills require bladed weapons to use, so you can't even put, like, Fencer stuff on a Sniper and then do, like, damage plus speed down from a distance. So that sucks too. So, I mean, me and Cruza both have Geomancer in D tier. I mean, Cruza put Geomancer in D tier because he didn't remember that, like, Geomancer has 11 defense and 11 resistant growth, which is amazing. So I think, like, if he redid his list, he would put Geomancer in C tier. But if we're putting Fencer and Geomancer in C tier because of their level up stats, and it's just for tank stats, like, I don't think that's enough personally. So, but I mean, I can still understand your placement into C tier, and I'm not, like, it's not a big deal. We're talking the difference between one tier here, and so, but yeah, I don't think, if it was me, I don't think that's enough to put him into C tier. But you putting him in C tier is not a bad thing either. So whatever. Now we have Sky Pirate. So I can understand this placement of Sky Pirate into C tier. I think literally Sky Pirate is the only job where in every single tier list you find it will be in a different tier. Because the opinion on Sky Pirate varies vastly from person to person, and it's totally understandable too. Um, because of the way Sky Pirate works, Cruza said that Sky Pirate is basically just an evasion boy. You just evade stuff with Sky Pirate, and that's fair. That is functionally what they do. Um, I know Cruza did like some quick math. He did a couple of assumptions on how long it would take to max out Life of Crime to make Sky Pirate broken. Um, and he roughly came up with 21 hours. It would take you 21 hours of playing the game like actively to fully max out your Life of Crime so that you're doing max cap damage with it. And like even like I played RuneScape, so I know what grinding means. So trust me, 21 hours is a lot. So I could totally understand not liking Sky Pirate because that's a lot of grinding. And so C tier is fine. But the other problem, like the reason why I put Sky Pirate so high is that if you do grind out Sky Pirate, if you do put in the 21 hours, Sky Pirate's the best unit in the game, hands down, not even close to anything else, because you're doing max cap damage, and that's something that not even Parivir or Summoner could do. And it's guaranteed max cap damage on literally anything that can't evade it. And then also on top of that, it's on a unit that has 100% evasion. So, yeah, Sky Pirate is at the peak of its power, the best unit in the game. At the worst case scenario, it's probably not even C tier if I'm being honest, because evasion tank without anything else is nothing. It's nothing. It's not being able to evade tanks is good, or sorry, evade attacks is good, but if you can't do anything in return, it's worthless. So yeah. So I'm that's Sky Pirate. Next you have Sniper. Okay, this is one where like if we're making meme thumbnails for each other, this is one where like I'll be putting Sniper up on my thumbnail and put Y right above it. I know Coffee Potato, he put Sniper in S tier. And you know what, Coffee Potato? 07 to you in chat because honestly, good on you. Sniper is an amazing class, okay? It and like maybe I don't agree with S tier, but goddamn am I happy to see it in S tier. The problem I have with Cruza's placement of Sniper is that it's just confusing because he talks about Pummel and he talks about Ravager having like double the sneak attack damage. He talks about units getting better action economy and like you go up to bat so hard for something like Magic Frenzy, which is mathematically not even times 2 action economy. It's more like 1.2 or 3. I mean, at the best. Whereas Double Shot is just straight up double action economy. Just straight up. Okay. So why is Sniper in C tier? Well, Cruza's argument comes at two things against Double Shot. The first one is that shots from Double Shot don't teleport to target. So what that means is that there are a chance that like your shots could hit terrain if it's in the way, or your shots can hit units that you didn't intend to hit because they're in the line of fire. So technically speaking, your shots can whiff when you use double shot. Here is why that's not really a good argument for for Sniper being in C tier. There are like 2 maps where the difference in terrain is so vast where your shots can whiff, and that's like the one cliff map in, I think it's the Bisga Greenlands, where like the difference in height is like 20 units or something crazy, where the one half is way up high and the other half is down low. And the other map being the one in Zedley Forest, where like all the map is low and then the very edge is like this huge cliff. Those are the only 2 maps where your shots can whiff due to terrain, but that just comes down to positioning. You know, you can put your sniper up on the cliff. You can give them the fairy shoes that let them teleport so that, you know, even if you can't give them a good jump stat, you can just give them infinite jump anyway. And even then, like, we're talking like 4 or 5 missions out of the 300 where you have to worry about terrain. So, and as for like accidentally shooting other units with your double shot, the game does a pretty good job of arcing your shots. You will basically never accidentally hit units you didn't mean to with like bow shots. In your entire playthrough of a game, that's going to happen to you like once or twice, maybe. So even then, I wouldn't say like whiffing your shots to that is enough to damage Sniper. I think like it's basically a non-factor, I think. And if you argue it more, I'm just gonna say it's a skill issue and that you don't know how to position your units properly, because if you're whiffing your shots on Sniper, like maybe like, I don't want to be rude or anything. Obviously, like I know you're good at the game. You have 1,500 hours, but like if you're seriously gonna put Sniper in C tier because you're like, oh, it can whiff shots, I'm sorry, that's just not a good argument. So the second thing that Cruza says about snipers is that snipers typically won't be doing back attacks. And to that, I have to say, where is your proof? Show me your work. The way the AI works in the game is, let's say you start a mission. Your units are on one side of the map. The enemy units are on the other side of the map. This will happen like 90% of the time, if not more. Your frontline fighters of both teams will collide in the center of the map. When that happens, the AI on the enemy team will typically go around your frontline fighters, hit them in the back, and then when they wait and end their turn, they will face that unit towards your frontline fighters that they just hit. What that means is that their back is now facing towards your sniper, which means you will be getting back attacks. And this is happening on like the second turn of the game. It's just how the AI works. The AI also will just sometimes randomly be like, I will face my back towards you now. It's just how the game works. It's just how the AI is programmed, that sometimes the AI will just give you back attacks for free. Sometimes they will, like, there is a little bit of logic to it that you can kind of play around, but to say that snipers will not be getting back attacks, they get back attacks without even moving because of just the way that melee combat works in the game. And then even if you were to argue that snipers are not getting back attacks, let me play out a scenario for you. Let me know if this has happened to you before. Okay. You start a game, your Master Monk and your Sniper are beside each other because just the way you placed your units. The enemy units are 7 tiles away. Okay, and your Master Monk doesn't have Ninja Tabby on, and you don't have move up as your privilege for the mission that you're on. So, first turn of the game, your Master Monk will probably move first. Your Master Monk moves forward and does nothing for the turn, or like maybe it does like a support skill or whatever. Your Sniper goes. Your Sniper double shots the enemy across from you. Second turn rolls around. Your Master Monk goes up, hits the unit, probably not even a back attack. It's probably like a side attack at best. Your Sniper goes, double shots the enemy unit. Your Sniper has done more damage than your Master Monk has in 2 turns. even if all you're doing is front attacks with Sniper, it's double action economy, and it's a lot of fucking damage. Sniper does not belong in C tier. It belongs in A tier or S tier. Shout out to Coffee Potato. Okay, with that being said, I'm not going to be... I hope you understand, Cruza, that like I'm just yanking your chain. I'm not mad at you for placing Sniper in C tier. Anyways. Next we have Black Mage. I understand the position of Black Mage in C tier. I mean, both Human and New Mao Black Mage are functionally the same unit, so... I think they have a little more use than C tier. Like, they are good units. They do tons of damage. They are definitely held back by a lot of things, but I think they're fine units. And I could totally understand placing them in C tier rather than B tier because they are very boring and very generic, and you can't really exploit them too much. So this makes sense. I'm not gonna argue that. So now we have Thief. I think we already talked about Thief, so I'm not gonna belabor that one too much. White Monk. Okay, so this is, I believe I talked at the start of the video. There's one other change I would make that isn't even reflected on here, and I would probably bring White Monk down a tier. Upon deliberation, White Monk is good as secondary to something else. They are not good to stand out on their own. They don't have anything to augment their own damage, and while they do have supports, it's very, like, center focused. You can't really, like, they don't have buffs to other units. It's mostly heal themselves kind of deal, you know. I think the reason why I put White Monks in A tier to begin with was because you start to get power on them very, very early. They're like the easiest access to counter, and counter is like the first access to cheating the action economy in the game. So they are very strong early, but definitely the later the game goes on, they fall off and they become better as secondary to something else. So I don't think Cruza's wrong to put White Monk in C tier either. I think that's fine. I think I definitely overvalued White Monk a little bit too much. Yeah, I was mostly considering like White Monk in combination with Master Monk is insane, and White Monk is, good early game unit. But otherwise, yeah, I think B or C is about right for White Monk. So other than that, I'm pretty sure me and Cruza both have the same mindset when it comes to that unit. Okay, Moogle Knight. Moogle Knight. I think we both agree on Moogle Knight being in C tier. It's the cool thing about Moogle Knight is it's like the best stat-wise level up unit in the whole game. It gets like something like 8 HP, 8 attack, which is good enough, 11 defense, which is amazing, and 9 resistance, which is really good. It means that if you level up your Moogles purely as a Moogle Knight, you're going to have something like 800 plus HP, almost like max at cap damage and maxed out defense and resistance. So it's just an incredible unit to level up as. The problem with Moogle Knight that holds it back is that its skills are nothing. Its skills don't do anything. Its skills, compared to every other job in the game that is higher than the tier that it's in, or even the other jobs that are in its own tier, its skills are bad. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. Next we have Gladiator. I'm pretty sure Cruza didn't realize that Gladiator has 12 attack growth in his videos. I think he knows that it's high, but I don't think he knows it's the highest stat growth out of any stat out of any job in the entire game. 12 attack it's incredibly high. It's incredibly high. However, the unfortunate thing about Gladiator is that its skills are either like a knockback, it's like the Moogle Rush thing where it's like half accurate but it's double damage, and its other skills are either Ultima or Scale on Magic. So that's the bad thing about Gladiator. I mean, I've always tried to find ways to make Gladiator work, and it just doesn't, so I think C tier is fine. I think we both agree on Gladiator's placement and what it's able to do. Now we have Heritor. I'm pretty sure Cruza is on the boat of Heritor being bad. He like every time he talks about Heritor, like his opinion of it gets worse and worse, and I think before long he will definitely call it a D tier job. And honestly, I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Heritor is such a disappointment because the lore behind it is cool, the idea behind it is cool. It's you have to put in like all this effort to get their skills, so you're sitting here like, oh man, these skills are gonna be so cool. You know, I'm at the end of the game, I went through all these struggles, I'm doing all these special missions and doing these special tasks, these skills are gonna be so cool, and then it's just a damage plus debuff, or it's just regen, or it's just single target, I don't know, spellbound or something stupid, you know. Or it's Leonard, which is the first skill you get, and it's like, man, couldn't these be cooler? Couldn't these be something? Don't get me wrong, Heritor is a job that is usable. The Wormit skill, which is range, damage plus slow, is good. It's good. Especially like you talk about Parivir struggling with like ranged options. I mean, I know they have Wind Slash, but Wind Slash I don't like Wind Slash. So you could put like Heritor on your make a Della Parivir and have Heritor. That way you have Wormit, so whenever you're not in range, you can damage plus slow. You could do that. And I know, like, probably the best skill that Heritor has is the one where it sacrifices your own life and you revive your entire party and restore their HP to full. I think that's probably the highest impact skill they have, and that's actually quite good. But yeah, I know Cruza was a little nervous putting Heritor in C tier, and honestly, dude, don't feel bad about it. I don't think I have heard a single person value Heritor above anything higher than I put it. Heritor, I think it is a very lukewarm take to say that Heritor is a bad class. So don't feel bad about it. Trust me, everybody wants it to be good, but it's just not. It's just not. And so yeah, I put it a little bit higher because I kind of jive with the skills a little more than Cruza does. But honestly, I totally understand his placement, and I even understand if someone wanted to put it in D. So other than that, I'm not going to argue much else. And now we have Chocobo Knight. So Cruza's joke tier is more of a joke tier than my joke tier. If that makes sense. But other than that, I'm pretty sure we both agree that Chocobo Knight is bad for same reasons. Like we have the same opinion on Chocobo Knight. So his Chocobo Knight is not in the Al-Cid tier, but I think like if I were to say, hey, you should put Chocobo Knight in Al-Cid tier, he'd be like, okay. So Tinkerer, also really bad. I think we both agree on what it does. I remember seeing someone in the comments saying that, oh, what you do with Tinkerer is you give Tinkerer Ribbon Bearer, you make it wear a ribbon, and then you field it with a bunch of women. And then you use like what is it, like the green gear, the one that poisons, or is that like purple or something? And so if you happen to roll the bad outcome, well, your team is full of ribbons, so nothing happens. The problem with that is that your skills are 50-50s, and they're 50-50s that can't be increased by anything. The chances will literally always be a 50-50 chance that either your opponent gets hit with it or you get hit with it. And so even if you negate the downside with ribbons, the problem is that Tinkerer skills are no better than Flintlock. Arguably, Flintlock is better, because at least Flintlock does something. Actually, no, I wouldn't, you know what? I'm not going to open that can, okay? Tinkerer is bad. Okay, and if anything, I think also Cruza would agree that Tinkerer should probably be in the Al-Cid tier. Next, we have Warrior. Again, we have the same opinions on that. I think he missed the fact that Warrior has that weird gravity skill thing. But other than that, yeah, we're on the same page with that. Same thing with Geomancer. We're on the same page on what it does. I think Cruza would probably put Geomancer in C tier because 11 defense and 11 resistance on its growths is simply amazing. So, yeah, I think other than that, there's not much else I could say. Okay, Ninja. Um, man, Ninja. I know like Cruza kind of. I have the feeling Cruza kind of expected to get backlash for putting Ninja in D tier. Like even as soon as I saw him do that, even I knew he was going to get comments being like, "Hey man, what the fuck?" So I think of all of his placements on his list, I think Ninja definitely was the most controversial one. But I can understand like his reasoning behind it to a degree. To a degree, like I said at the beginning, when he evaluated Ninja, he basically pretended like dual wield didn't exist, um, which is fine. I mean, if you want to make your list on that, that's fine. I'm not gonna. It's your list. You could do whatever the fuck you want with it. But the problem is that even without dual wield, Ninja's still a pretty good class. And Cruza even admit in his response to Coffee Potato that he like he would probably put Ninja in either B or C tier because like Ninja speed growth to him was like good enough to do that. And he's right. I mean, most human jobs, like even Parivir, which I think is the second fastest human job, is only 60% speed. Okay, so humans are not very fast. So whenever you're building a human, you're basically always going to be pumping a few levels of ninja into them so that you can increase their speed. And Cruza said that like ninja's a pit stop for humans, and yeah, totally. And I think that has merit. If you have to go through a job to like make your unit more effective, I think that job has value. So even if you're only using ninja as like speed level up, or even if you're only using ninja to get dual wield and then you're classing out, that still is value. Okay, the job still is worth something. So I mean, obviously you can't really like there has to be other stuff going on there, but my point is that Ninja has things going for it, okay? Whether it's the speed stat, whether it's dual wield, specifically for me, but it's not just that. Like, Ninja also has niche uses elsewhere. Like the Turbo MP ninjutsu stuff, the concentration ninjutsu stuff. Like, Ninja almost becomes a support class sometimes. I think if you looked at Ninja as like a support class, you might come around on it a little bit more because you're not really using ninja as a damaging class. I mean, sure you could throw dual wield on it, which you probably will, but like for the most part, what you're doing is you're putting concentration on your ninja and you're just throwing logs at everything and making like suddenly nothing can move anymore, right? So that's good. So yeah, ninja has other stuff that it does, and Cruza said that ninja's frail, and I kind of agree. But the thing about Ninja is that they baseline have 15% evasion. So Ninja kind of comes with an asterisk, kind of like the Ninja Garb does. Where, yeah, Ninja is frail, but they also take 15% less damage, like mathematically, over the course of the game. So, yeah, ninjas are like evasion tanks. And like you throw on Ninja Garb on them, suddenly you're at 30% evasion. You put on a Thief's Cap, you're at 35. You dual wielder at Getsu Denbus, you're at 45% evasion. Like it stacks up really quickly. And 45 evasion is incredible. It basically means that like every other hit attack that you're receiving just misses you. So like even if you're frail, you kind of want evasion then because evasion will basically mean okay, will I be one shot or will I dodge the hit and survive? you know. So I don't know. I think ninjas are good. I mean, even if they're frail, they're evasion. So you know, they can do damage. I mean, if you're dual wielding Regetsu Denbus, like you're getting action economy out of your auto attacks, that means something. If you decide to go turbo MP ninjutsu, you know, you start throwing out logs all the time and suddenly nothing can move anymore. That's pretty good. And ninjas have great speed, so if Cruza were to put Ninja in B tier, like he said he would maybe consider evaluating as, I think I will be happy with that. I don't think, like, I can kind of understand, especially if you take away Ninja, like if you don't consider Ninja with dual wield, I think B tier is a perfectly serviceable spot to put it. So I'm not going to, even though it was controversial at the time, I don't think Cruza now has a controversial opinion about Ninja anymore, so that's fine. Now we have Moogle Time Mage. Yeah, I understand D tier. I mean, compared, if you compare it to Mou Time Mage, they are just bad. But the thing is that if you don't compare it, Moogle Time Mage is usable, and that's more than I can say about most of the other trash that's in D tier. So Moogle Time Mage still gets haste every single turn, and it's still Hastega every other turn, so Hastega every other turn is still Hastega every other turn. You can't really go wrong with that, so that's why I put Moogle Time Mage in C tier, but I totally understand if, especially if you're specifically comparing it to Mou Time Mage, I totally understand putting it in D tier. Cruza also puts Dragoon in D tier. I think we have the exact same opinion about Dragoon, so I'm not going to hamper that too much. I just like, I'm the kind of player who the first thing I do is I abuse auction houses till I get a Sage Crossseer. Then I have a Green Mage with Trank, and so for a lot of the early missions, I'm running a Dragoon so that I can Trank, jump, and kill stuff really quickly. So that's why I have Dragoon in C tier, essentially. Moogle Black Mage being in D tier, we have the same opinion about that. Berserker, we basically have the same opinion about that. I probably should put Berserker in D tier as well. I don't know. I kind of wanted to get my point across that Helm Splitter is a pretty good ability that you will rarely ever use. So yeah, I probably should have put Berserker in D tier, but like I think I gave a good enough fight to justify me putting it in C tier as well. Okay, Lanista. Um, yeah. I mean, in my original video, I already kind of talked about Cruza's opinion about Lanista and where it goes, so there's not much else I can really say about it that hasn't already been said. Um, yeah, I think it's just a drastic under-evaluation of tanks, I suppose, because as you can see, he also has Defender in D tier. And I mean, that's fine. If you're focused on just one-shotting things all the time, then why do you need tanks? Like, you're finishing missions in 6 turns at most anyway, so what does tanks do for you? And especially, like, on the hard difficulty, killing things faster matters more than surviving things longer. So tanks tend to not be as valuable on the harder difficulty. But I still think Lanistas are good. I think the Razzle Dazzle, when it comes online, is pretty good. And even without it, like Haunting Vision's pretty good. And also you can have Ranger stuff as its secondary. And you're laughing, right? So there's that. Both archers in D tier, yeah, that's fair. I value their debuffs a little more. They both get concentration, so you'll be able to charm stuff, and you'll be able to blind stuff, and you'll be able to addle stuff a lot easier. They're probably the easiest access to Addlepation in the entire game, so that's something. And addle is pretty good. It's effectively like, oh, this unit doesn't exist for 3 turns. It's pretty good. So archers do have that, so I don't think they're quite as bad as D tier, but I mean, if you start comparing them to everything else, yeah, they seem very lackluster. Soldier, yep, it's in D tier. Defender, I already touched on a little bit. Again, it's mostly just because tanks on the harder difficulty don't matter. Like they're less valuable, but I think Defender has enough going for it that makes them a strong unit. And if nothing else, you can have it be secondary to something else. Being able to give yourself re-raise and regen is pretty good. It does cost a lot of MP, but luckily Bonga have MP, so you could even chuck Defender on a bishop and suddenly things are different, you know. So Beastmaster, yep, I'm pretty sure we both have the same opinion on Beastmaster. Arcanist, I know in Cruza Complex's response to Coffee Potato, he says that he misevaluated the death, like the MP cost for the death spell of Arcanist. He originally thought that with have MP, it still took 2 turns to cast death. That's not the case, and he knows it now. If you have MP on your Arcanist, you can cast death every single turn. And so Cruza said that he would probably, put Arcanist higher up on his list. And I would be curious where you would place Arcanist. If I had to make a shot in the dark, I would probably say that you would put it in B tier, because that's where you put Assassin. And he's totally right. I mean, Arcanist being able to cast death every other turn, or being able to kill something every other turn without any support is pretty good. Because even without an accuracy up buff, like without being tranked by a green mage, Arcanist, like, death landing is still like 60% accurate or something crazy like that. So yeah, it's pretty good. And then outside of that, again, they have gravity, they have drain, and you can kind of manipulate their mathematician stuff to a degree. The sad thing is that their haste thing is a level 5 ability. So like all of your units, you want them to be level 95 instead of level 99, just so that you can make their level 5 haste work. But that's like that's super nitpicky. You're not using Arcanists to make use of their mathematician skills, so. But yeah, not much else I could say about that, because Cruza has to reevaluate where he would put Arcanist. If he released another list that said, okay, Arcanist is in C tier, I might have some words for him, but otherwise, that is that. Okay, so Bishop. Man, I know he's going to have a few words about Bishop. All I have to say to you at the start of this Cruza is that I put Bishop in A tier. Coffee Potato put Bishop in A tier. Your comments were agreeing that Bishop belongs in a higher tier. My comments agreed that Bishop belongs in a higher tier. You are on your own when it comes to Bishop. You are on the island of solitude. Bishop is a good job class. Your argument against it was that Bonga are not magic averse. Trickster exists, so if you need magic plus speed, you level up as Trickster, then you switch back to Bishop. Bishop has 9 magic growth. I know for whatever reason you said that its magic growth was bad. It's not. It's 9, okay? That's really good still. So even in the interim where you don't get access to Trickster because, it's like the last job you unlock, you could still spend your levels leveling up Bishop and get lots of magic stat doing that. Yes, they're slow, but I mean, again, once you get Trickster, you have a fast magic growth unit, okay? The other thing about, like, probably the thing I agree with is that Bonga don't have a lot of magic skills to use, but Bishop has enough. They have Holy Water Air, okay? That's enough. You're basically always going to be hitting for weakness with Holy Water Air, and you'll always have an answer to units that resist some of those. Then Bishop also has a Dispel, which is straight up better than Roar. Okay, I don't care how you fold it. Being able to choose which targets to remove buffs from is better than just having to hit yourself. They have a Cure spell. They have Break, which I explained why is really good. Break, even with have MP, is still every other turn, but guess what? Killing things every other turn is still killing things every other turn. So, at the end of the day, honest to God, my feeling about where you placed Bishop is that you believe that Bishop was bad, and instead of trying to find a way to make them good, anytime you were told that they were good, you were just like, no, Bishop's bad. And so now, for whatever reason, on your list, Bishop is in D tier. I mean, I could totally be off on that. I mean, again, I'm not you. I don't understand your thinking pattern. And I'm not trying to like dig or anything. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to, start internet beef. I'm just saying that I think of all of your job placements, definitely Bishop is the most, like I said before, you're on your own with that one. That's one where you're fighting on your own to maintain that stance. So yeah, I don't know. I guess the best thing would be like try it out for yourself. Sit down and play a game where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna make Bishop work, and you'll find that it's a lot easier to make Bishop work than you think it is. And then we also have Animist here, which I believe Animist we have the same opinion on. I think one thing I want to make clear is that Animist does have that skill, Cuisine, which restores full HP, but it's 22 MP cost on a unit that doesn't get have MP, so it's bad. Yeah, Animist is just not a good class, so yes. And then I think for both Al-Cid and Flintlock, we both have the same opinion. Flintlock has awful action economy. Honestly, it feels like Flintlock should have been just a Cannoneer job. It feels like that's how it should have been, and like Prime should have just been kind of like Combustion, where it just doubles your next auto attack damage. But for whatever reason, they decided not to do that, and now the job is worthless, which is annoying. And then, as for Al-Cid, it feels like Al-Cid should have been able to reclass. It feels like he should have. It feels like he was planned to be able to reclass, and he was just going to have like a special job class, but they ran out of time and they didn't make animations for him doing like the attacks from the other classes, so they just made him agent only, and so he sucks because of it. But like Hume, like imagine a Hume having access to guns and like the skills that Al-Cid have. Like that would be pretty good. So, but yeah, that's it. I've gone through it all, man. It took 2 hours. Oh no. Oh no. Man. But yeah, so I promised you guys that I would compare my list to Cruza Complex if you replied to me, and so here we are. I'll be honest, as soon as I released my video on my tier list, I instantly started taking notes between comparing my list to his. I know I said I would wait, and I did, but like I took notes well beforehand, so I kind of was like preparing for this. I didn't like expect to get a response because like, I mean, I'm nobody. But I did kind of call him out by name, so I mean, point is I promised and here I am delivering. So my plan is to, like, I recorded this before he released his response. I know he was working on it, but he hasn't released his response yet. I think my plan is that I'm recording this now and I'm going to release my comparison video close to around when he releases his. The reason being that like I don't want to get his comparison video and then I like reply to his reply to me, and then he may feel like, oh, I'm gonna reply to him replying to me replying to him, and then I'll be like, oh, I'll reply to you replying to me. I don't want to play that game. I kind of want it to be just the information we have now on each other is what we're going to make our videos on. So yeah, my plan is to wait until he releases his stuff, and then maybe I'll throw together my video and then release it, and then that's that. So Cruza, if you're seeing this and you already released your video comparing your stuff to mine, and you like have made changes and talked about it, that is not reflected here, I am sorry, but I'm going off the information I have on your 2 videos that you made for this video, and I hope that is satisfactory enough for you. And yeah, I also want to say thank you for interacting and having this discussion with me. I really appreciate it. I never thought, like, every time I boot up Final Fantasy Tactics A2, I always get hit with this feeling of, oh, this is my game. Nobody else in the world is playing this but me. But if anything, the one thing that you specifically have made me realize that this game is beloved by more than just me. And honestly, that is something I think is precious. So that's that. Thank you guys for watching and joining me on this trip. Go give Cruza Complex some love. It seems like he's a bit of a variety guy. And he's kind of like me, where his uploads are like, sometimes he'll be gone for a long time. But yeah, he seems like a cool guy that has some interesting takes on some interesting games. So yeah. With that said, I think that's all I have to say. So again, thank you for joining me, and I hope you guys enjoyed.